What if Earth was a cube instead of a sphere? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the Earth wasn't round at all, but a massive cube, floating through space like a six-sided dice. Sounds absurd, maybe, but let's roll with it, pun intended, and see just how different life would be if our planet had sharp edges and flat faces. First of all, gravity. On our real spherical Earth, gravity pulls everything toward the center of the planet, creating that familiar round shape and making down feel the same, no matter where you are. But a cube? That's a different beast. If you stood smack in the center of one of the cube's six faces, gravity would still pull you straight down, toward the center of the Earth's mass. So, that part might feel pretty normal, but the farther you move toward one of the cube's edges or corners, the weirder things would get. Near the edges, gravity would start pulling at an angle, dragging you diagonally toward the cube's core. It would feel like trying to walk uphill, even though the ground under your feet was flat. You'd constantly be leaning slightly, like someone perpetually climbing a hill that leads nowhere. And the corners, those would be the most extreme places. Gravity would be tugging at such a strange angle that standing upright would be nearly impossible. You might feel lighter, disoriented, or even as if you were tipping sideways. In fact, if Earth had formed as a cube, people would probably never settle near the corners at all. It would just be too uncomfortable. Now, think about the oceans. On a round Earth, water flows easily around the curve, pulled evenly by gravity. On cube Earth, water would behave very differently. It would pool at the center of each face, creating vast square seas surrounded by dry, elevated land near the edges. The edges themselves might become strange, highland ridges, dry and almost uninhabitable. And the corners? Probably towering mountains, icy and deserted. Rivers would all flow inward, toward the center of each face, creating giant whirlpool-like drainage basins. Weather patterns would change too. With 6 giant ocean basins instead of one interconnected ocean, you'd have isolated climate systems on each face. One face might be a lush tropical paradise, while another could be an endless icy desert. Travel between faces would be difficult. You'd need to cross steep ridges and adapt to entirely different climates and ecosystems. It would be like living on 6 different planets, connected only at their edges. But here's where it gets even stranger: the sun. On our current spherical Earth, the rotation gives us smooth day-night cycles and predictable seasons. But how would a cube rotate? If cube Earth still spun on an axis through the centers of opposite faces, only 2 faces at a time would ever be exposed to sunlight. The other 4 would be in permanent twilight or darkness until the planet rotated 90 degrees to bring a new face into the sun. That would mean each face would experience incredibly long days and nights, each lasting months. Imagine 3 months of sunlight, followed by 3 months of darkness. It would be like living in the Arctic Circle, except everywhere. Plants would have to evolve to store energy for long, dark periods. Animals might hibernate for months, and humans would need to build entire societies adapted to extreme time shifts. And what about space travel? Launching rockets from the edge of a cube would be a nightmare. Gravity would pull unevenly, potentially destabilizing launches unless they were carefully calibrated. Satellites would also orbit differently. Some might even crash into the sharply jutting corners of Earth's giant cube. GPS signals would have to be recalibrated, and you'd have to rethink everything from flight paths to weather satellites. Even human history would be radically different. Early explorers wouldn't have sailed smoothly around a globe. They'd hit walls, literal and figurative, at the edge of every face. Trade routes, culture, and civilizations would have developed independently on each face for far longer, with the edges acting as natural barriers between them. The great empires of Earth might never have met. We might speak dozens more languages, each isolated on their own square patch of Earth. Religion and mythology would change too. With a planet so clearly structured and symmetrical, people might have believed Earth was crafted deliberately, maybe even as a divine cube made by higher powers. The number 6 would have a special place in culture, and you can bet there'd be endless conspiracy theories about what lies at the corners of the Earth. But here's the wildest part. A cubic Earth simply couldn't exist naturally. Gravity is relentless. It always pulls mass into the most compact, stable form. A sphere. That's why every planet, every star, every drop of water in zero gravity becomes round. If Earth had somehow formed as a cube, it wouldn't last. Over time, gravity would squash the corners, flatten the edges, and round out the faces. Slowly, the cube would soften, melting into a sphere over millions of years. So, no, a cube-shaped Earth isn't likely. But imagining one, that's where the fun begins. It reminds us how much of what we take for granted, gravity, oceans, daylight, is shaped by something as simple and profound as the shape of our planet. It's a weird, wonderful world we live on. And thankfully, it's round.